Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be building a crosscut sled, or whatever you want to call it. Basically, to be able to cut 90 degrees to the saw blade with smaller pieces of wood and stuff and not have to worry about kickback. There's lots of examples of why trying to cross-cut on a table saw without some kind of way to stabilize the piece of wood is not a good idea. Can be very dangerous. So that's what I'm going to be building. The main reason I plan on building one is because I want to be able to cut a dado into pieces, and my chop saw isn't a slide. So I can't just slide back and forth with the chop saw to create those slots. I could use the router, but sometimes, just using it on the table saw is a lot faster. And especially repeated cuts that are a nice 90-degree angle are really nice to do on the chop saw, or on the table saw. It's a pretty common piece of jig in a shop. So that's what we're going to be working on today, is making a simple crosscut jig slash sled slash whatever you want to call it. Basically, we're going to be cutting some slots to slide into the existing grooves on the table saw, and those slots will hold a piece 90 degrees to the saw blade and be able to push it through and hold the piece in place. So first thing we're going to do is find some pieces of material to use to do this. So let's head to that. Okay, one of the first things I'm going to do for this project is hit the scrap bucket of mine and see what we can find for pieces that'll work. So basically I'm looking for a piece for the fence part, which I think something like this should work. It's tall enough that I think it'll work. And then I need a piece that I can rip some scraps off from for the parts that slide in the track on the table saw. That'll work. Okay, we got our scrap pieces that we're going to be using. This one will be the upright fence that we'll be using to build this off from. I'm going to take this piece and cut it into some slots to fit down into the tracks of the table saw top here. Basically, we're going to have to cut them so they fit down in there, and basically the top of them will be roughly flush with the table. So that's the first step, is I got to cut these down to size and then fit those in here. My one problem is where the fence guide on my table saw is. This fence guide bolts into the top of the table here in the way of this slot. So I want this slot to be, or this slide to be more set towards the front edge. So that way when I have the thing all the way back, it can be starting here. And that way the other slot can slide through further, which is fine. But this one will have to start at the front, at the back edge of the fence, and that way it can still slide nicely. And this is going to be version 1 of this for me. I plan on building one that I can later angle to make angle cuts and whatnot. So it's got a big check down the whole length of it. I just noticed that now. So we might rip this down a little narrower to use to get that check out of there. Yeah, but so we'll rip that down, then we'll rip this into some pieces to use for the slots, and then I'm probably going to I got to figure out how I'm going to attach that to this, to the slots to this. I'm probably going to use a screw and some glue. So let's get ripping. As I said, one of the first things I'm going to do is rip this. You can see this check in here. So I'm going to rip this down to a size to eliminate that check. So what I'm going to do is set the fence right about there to just avoid the check. I want to set my table saw blade. I like to set it just about so the full tooth is above the piece that I'm cutting, so that way when the blade is hitting through the wood, it's actually coming down on it and cutting through it rather than hitting up through it. At least that's my theory. Whether or not there's any reality to that or not, I don't know. But anyway, so let's get this ripped down, and then we'll move on to the strips. So here's our fence piece now ripped down to the right size, the check removed, and it also make sure we have a nice straight edge on this side because that's the side I just ripped. So we got a nice square piece of wood to use for our fence. I'll cut it down to length when I'm a little closer to ready on figuring out what that's going to be. Right now we're going to work on cutting out the strips. So what I'm going to be doing is measuring the depth of the slot and the width of the slot to figure out what dimensions we need to use for this. This is the scrap piece I'm going to be using to make the strips. It is too wide to fit in there now, and so what I'm going to do is first cut this to the right width to fit down in here. Then the pieces I'm going to be cutting are for the height, so that way the skinnier cut will be out of the bigger piece of wood. I think it'll be a little easier and a little safer that way. So, like I said, what we're going to do is measure the depth of this, which I believe looks to be about 3/8 of an inch, right around 3/8, I think. 1, 2, yeah, about 3/8. But I'm not worried about it being a little bit above that, so I'm gonna cut it a hair high, and see how that goes. But first cut is actually going to be this cut, so we'll start with this one first, which is about 3/4. Yep. So we're going to cut 3/4 inch thick piece here on the fence. Right. One thing I want to make sure is that it's not too tight because I want it to be able to slide. So make sure I'm not too thick. Now I'm going to run that blade up a little higher. And run that through there and trim that down. Ain't much. It's hardly anything I'm taking off there. That's a tight fit though. So we're going to take just a hair more off. Nice fit in there now. Just snug enough to keep things straight. Okay. Now we got to cut them the right depth, which is 3/8. So I can go ahead and take the saw back down. So if they're a touch high, I'm okay with that. Okay, now I'm going to chop down the fence to the length I want. Basically, the length doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to kind of feel something that feels like the right length. I think basically what I'm going to do is try to use the best piece out of here. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is square up the end. Okay. So that's the end of that. And then we're going to probably, let's see, right in here somewhere, right around that old nail hole. Should be playing long enough. Alright. There's that piece. Now I got to cut down the tracks to size. Alright, so we got the 3 tracks here. I did 3 just in case I liked one of them better. Really, they're all pretty much the same. I'm going to use, you got this knot down in this end, and this end they're at an angle, so I'm going to chop it off just past the angle here, and then I'm probably going to cut off just before the knot, and then I'm going to use that section of it for the track. Now I have these 3 pieces. They're slightly different lengths. I don't really care. So anyway, so now I'm going to go figure out which 2 I want to use. My guess is probably the shorter one and this one, because this one's got a nail hole in it. Alright, so let's go back to the table saw. Alright, here we are back over at the table saw. I got my 2 pieces to go in the tracks, and I got my fence that I'm going to be using. And let's try fitting it in here and see how it goes. So, I got the 2 pieces. This one's slightly shorter, so this is the one I'm going to use over on this side because of this. Eventually, I probably will cut a notch out of that bracket so that way that can slide through there. One of the things is a lot of my tools are hand-me-down tools from my father. This used to be his old table saw, and when we built my house, he ended up leaving it here at my garage, and it's been here ever since. That's how I acquired this. So this is a rather old table saw, and it, for the most, I mean, it works great. It works wonderful. I love the fairly solid top to it. It could use some TLC. We'll over time work on it a little more, but like I said, so he put this bigger fence system on here, and when he did, that's how that got bolted on there. So I think I can take a notch. I think this is just aluminum bracket, and I think I can take a notch out of that with the cut-off wheel or something. Anyway, that's what I think I'm going to do, is cut that off or see if I can remount that to a different spot on here. Anyway, different project, different day. So what I'm going to do is set that so that's right there. Comes right to the edge of that. This one I'll set so it comes back a little farther. The fence will go roughly like this. So that way, it isn't going to slide. Oh, that one slid. But that way I can come all the way back to the back edge of the table, and that's when that one will hit and stop. But so what I need to do is figure out where 90 degrees to the saw blade is, and figure out where to mark on those slides and attach this together. So that's what I'm going to do. So we'll get this up here to the saw blade. Get the saw blade back up a little ways. And then what I'm going to use is this. Set this out there all the way so it's nice and square. And then I can figure out how to make it square. basically something like that. I guess what I'm going to do, because I did leave those both up a touch, I think I'm going to glue it. And set something on here to hold that glue in place while it dries. And that should hold it well enough that I can pull it up out and then screw it in from the other side. So that's what I'm gonna do. Okay, so I'm using some wood glue, and what I'm gonna do is set this all up. I got some scrap wood here. What I'm gonna do is set a concrete block across here to hold that in place while it's drying. Because I don't have a clamp anywhere near long enough to go that far in. So that's my plan. I know other people have used like a fast set super glue type thing on there to hold it in place while they pull it out. But this is what I got, so this is what I'm using. Make do with what you got, right? Okay, so I got my square. So what I'm going to do is I'm pretty close to where it needs to go already. So what I'm going to do is just put a dab of glue in each one of those spots. Of course, the glue is dried and cracked closed, or dried closed. Okay. Hopefully it'll come out. So, like I said, we're going to stick a little bit of glue right there, and a little bit of glue right here. Not a lot, just enough to basically set it up and hold it in place while I'm doing this. I know I'm going to get glue all over the top of the saw, but I'll clean that up afterwards. So what I'm going to do is hold this on here, and make sure it's straight to the saw blade. Okay, that's where it needs to go. I'll let that set for just a minute on its own so I don't wiggle it while I'm setting the concrete block on there. So I think I'll try to get this close to the same level. Ooh, I bumped it, didn't I? That's not good. Okay, restart this. Okay, so I'm going to let that set for, like I said, just for a minute on its own. Basically, the glue is just to hold it. Just to hold it before I screw it. I'm going to screw it afterwards. So, alright, now let's, hopefully I don't wiggle it when I set this down. There. I'm going to double check to make sure I'm square to the blade. And I aim on this side. Let me double check this side to make sure. Oh yeah. Nice and square. Alright. So that's good. Now, I'm waiting for this to dry. I was just going to talk about this for a second. Being that I'm only going to be getting one screw into the bottom of this, it would let it possibly pivot. I mean, it shouldn't because the glue should hold it. But what I'm going to do is end up putting a bracket on the back side of this one. I can't on the other one because it doesn't extend through. But I'm going to put a bracket on the back side of this one, and that will get screwed together too and glued to make it so it can't pivot on that one. At least on this version of this thing. Version 2, like I said, I'm going to make it so I can adjust the angle. But so that's where we're going to try for now. And so I'm going to let this sit here for half an hour, and I'm going to come back, and then we'll screw it and see how it works. Okay, I left this drying for, I don't know, it's been probably hour and a half or so, 2 hours. So should be able to just take this right off now, and then okay, now should be able to just pick this up. It should hold those no problem because of the glue. Perfect. Now I'm going to set it like this, just to, actually I'm going to set it this way so that way it can be kind of supported that way there too. And now I'm going to drill some holes down in there. I got a countersink bit to use to drill these down in. So what I'm going to do is drill one in right in here. One over here. Okay, now I'm going to put those 2 screws in, that way it's a little less delicate. I mean, the glue should hold it really good, but okay, there's that. That should set nicely in here and slide nicely. Get rid of those. Okay, as I said before, I'm going to put a stop back in here. I got the old piece that came off from the cutoff from the fence to begin with, and I figured I'd just put that right there like that. So, flip this over, flip this over. It's going to go right there like that. Just as a little extra support. So what I'm going to do is put a little glue on it. Okay, so there's our crosscut jig. Sits nicely in here, slides. It'll be nice and perpendicular to the saw blade. Perfect. Okay, so let's fire it up and give it a go. Okay, so one of the things I did is I chopped a couple small just blocks of scrap wood, and what I'm going to use them for is stop blocks on the sides. So what I can do is grab some like these quick clamp, just squeeze clamp things I got, and I can clamp a stop block wherever I need to, so I can do repeated cuts. I'll show you here. So I can say we need to chop this up, and I need them, you know, however long I got this set at right here. I could put this block here, clamp it on with one of these, and then turn the table saw on. One of the things I'm going to do is set that a little lower, so that way I'm not chopping through my fence as much. I'll be fixing that. One. Slide it over to my stop block. how you get repeated cuts. So as you can see, you can sit there and repeat cuts easily with a stop block like that. Now I got a whole bunch of pieces cut the same. So now, the next thing I'm going to do is, as I said, kind of add some more beef to the back of this to make it so that way this slot cutting through here where the blade's cutting through, I can cut up higher. I'm going to put a little more wood back here so that way it helps support across here a little more. So let's do that. One of the things I'm going to do is set my stop block over here so they're out of the way, and then they're right there whenever I need them. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to put these here. I don't think these clamps will open that wide, will they? No. Okay. So what I'm going to do is screw that together. But I got to make sure I keep my screws out far enough so they're away from the saw blade, which isn't a problem. That's why. Okay. The only screws I have are too long to go, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a couple from the front and then the other ones from the back. So, alright. And I'll put a little bit of glue on them as well. Not a lot because the screws will be doing most of the holding anyway. Just enough to basically center it around the cut. And then I'm going to put okay, so one little thing when I was first building this together, I didn't think about. I kept saying that I wasn't worried about the slides being slightly raised up above the surface because I would just hold this up is what I was thinking. But now, after trying to use it, I realize that being higher than the table is allowing pieces to rock on it. And therefore I'm not getting a flush cut when I cut through there. It's actually getting a slight angle to it. So what I need to do is thin out here and this section of this. Obviously the back side isn't going to matter, but the whole front side of this one and this one. So what I'm going to do is take the sander, just take the Orville sander and sand those down a little bit. So I'm going to pull it out, I'll sand them, try it, and keep doing that back and forth till I get it the right size. So that's what I'm going to do right now is just sand those down quick. Okay, there, sanded it down. Now it's all slightly lower than the surface of the table. So that way, nothing hits anywhere now. So, I don't have to worry about pieces rocking on there anymore. So, there's that. Okay, so that's how I built my quick, simple crosscut sled type setup. I guess it's not really a sled, but a crosscut fence. And then, like I said, I'm just using these with for stop blocks, and I can move them where I need to easily. Like I said, this is version 1. My next version, I'm hoping to build one that I can angle. It'll probably be more of a standard type sled with a base underneath it, but I think first I need to get rid of this, notch out this spot on the table saw bracket. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this build. Pretty simple little project, simple to do for anybody. I mean, I just used some scrap wood I had, and really there isn't much to it. It's a very simple, very low cost way to do this. And like I said, repeated cuts without a problem. Probably if I was actually had to cut these like this, I probably would use the chop saw, honestly. But like I said, my plan for this is to use it for dadoing notches and stuff, and grooves and stuff into things that I can't do with the chop saw. So this is going to work perfect for that, and I'm sure many other things in the future. So again, thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing to get notified of next upload. I am planning on building a push stick for pushing pieces through. So that's my next project, so be on the lookout for that one. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. So, as I was repositioning the camera, one of my supports, my clamps, here's what it's supposed to look like, and here's what this one looks like now. It exploded. So apparently these plastic ones don't hold up real well. So I'll have to eventually get some better clamps, but this one still seems to be working fine. So for now, it'll be fine. I have several. I have a whole bunch of these, so it's not a big deal. Just grab another one. I don't know if maybe this one got cracked somehow or something. But anyway, it popped and pieces went flying everywhere. And now the other one flew apart. I don't think this one will fly apart.